Hello, everybody, and welcome to the TechEducator Podcast, your home for professional development. My name is Jeff Bradbury, and tonight we're going to be talking all about makerspaces, and we're going to talk a little bit about some of the great activities that you guys can do out there with your makerspaces. Of course, we're going to have time to define what a makerspace is, how do you do it, what happens if you're looking for makerspaces on a budget, what happens if you're looking for makerspaces on a cart, and all those other nice little STEM activities. We have two great panelists tonight. From the great state of Connecticut, I want to bring on Assistant Principal, Mr. Rob Pennington. Rob, how are you today? Welcome to the TechEducator Podcast.
Thank you, Jeff. I'm excited to be here.
Thanks so much for being here, man. How are you? And tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I was the lead tech coach in Connecticut in my district, and I've transitioned this year into a curriculum and instruction specialist, which is just a fancy title for assistant principal.
Nice. And do you have any type of maker spaces in your school, or have you guys been looking into doing anything like that?
So look, we have in our library, we have Makerspace Monday, which our amazing library media specialist has tons of different activities set up for the kids, but we are now in the process of designating a space so that all of the supplies can be kept in one area and it can be used by anyone in the school, not just the one library media specialist.
Nice. Looking to talk about all of that great stuff and learn about how your school out there can certainly take advantage of all of that stuff. Want to bring on our co-host, Mr. Sam Patterson. Sam, how are you today?
I'm doing great. It's another beautiful day in Southern California.
And I hope that you are here to be my neighbor with all of that stuff. Sam, tell us a little bit about yourself and tell us a little bit about our topic for tonight.
Well, I am a makerspace coordinator and STEAM lab keeper for Echo Horizon School. I work with grades pre-K through 6th. I am in my first year in that position. For the last 3 years, I have been a technology teacher, and for 12 years before that, I was a high school English teacher. Tonight, what we're talking about are makerspace activities where I find I can get kids to do amazing content-rich work through different makerspace activities, and that's really what we're going to be talking about, is how you can essentially leverage high engagement activities and lessons to get kids to go deeper into content area learning.
And for anybody out there who might be looking at this topic and saying, how do I learn more? There's, of course, several great ways that you can reach out and be a part of this and all of our shows on the TeacherCast Educational Broadcasting Network. You can, of course, find us on Twitter at TeacherCast. Leave us a voice message over at teachercast.net/voicemail. Email us at feedback@teachercast.net. And, of course, this and all of our shows are going to be subscribed on teachercast.net/audio and teachercast.net/video. And, you know, guys, it's such an important topic these days. And we look at things as we did maybe 20 years ago, where school districts wanted to bring in technology. So we created a computer lab and we put 30 computers in it. And then everybody got a chance to go to the computer lab. Then, of course, over time, all the computers went into the classrooms. And now all the computers are going into kids' desks and into kids' pockets. And that's kind of where we are right now, right? I mean, right now there's a STEM lab that people go to, and it's only really now that you're starting to see the beginnings of STEM is in certain teachers' classrooms. So I want to just kind of open up the general question here. Sam, let me ask you this one here. What would you define a makerspace as? If somebody says, what is a makerspace, how could you define that?
Makerspace at a school is a designated space that has the tools as well as the storage and workspace available for lessons that might be a little too prep intensive or space intensive for the classroom. In a lot of ways, I like to think of it as, when it's working its best, it's an extension of the classroom. So it's a special space where you can go to make the bigger mess, to do, to collaborate with another teacher on a project that is, bigger than what you would want to be hanging out in the back of your room for a bunch of days.
And is a makerspace something that is it a big project? Is it expensive? Is this, or is this just a teacher going out and buying their own stuff?
You can do makerspace so many different ways. I think that a lot of us really begin it with doing very maker-centered lessons. And, you know, it's a lesson where kids have to do stuff with their hands and have to make important decisions about what they're doing. You know, a craft lesson is a lesson where all of the kids get exactly the same materials and are expected to make essentially the same thing following the same set of instructions. A maker lesson, they're going to get a goal. They might be shown a concept, and they're going to be asked to make a bunch of choices about what kinds of materials they're going to use, what they're going to do to complete the task, how they're going to record and share it. And there's a lot of different ways you can do that. And the kind of main idea behind Makerspace is that we're all going to work through that process together. And we're not going to be really focused on the fact that we get the right thing at the end. We're going to be focused on learning as much as we can in the process.
Rob, talk to us a little bit about some of the things that you're after. Obviously, you said you were a tech coach. Now you're in an administrative role. When a teacher and you are looking to put this project together, what kind of considerations do you have?
Well, one of the things that so just to give you a little background, we actually just had a STEM expo. We kind of have gotten away from the traditional science fair type project and went into more of a classroom STEM expo. And I have to tell you, the amount of student engagement was through the roof. And many of the things that Sam was just talking about were they had a goal, but how they reached that goal and things that they tested through the process was very different. And I think many of the activities that they ended up doing are things that could be done in a makerspace. I think I can just tell you about a couple. One was spaghetti towers, which, you know, it very inexpensive. All you really need are spaghetti and marshmallows. Another one was Lego earthquakes.
I want to jump in really quick on that.
Sure.
It's an awesome example because marshmallows are a pain to get out of carpeting, right?
Correct.
So you might have carpeting in your classroom, but maybe the makerspace has got, you know, is more set up like a science classroom, so it can be kind of hosed down and flamed off at the end of the day. Sorry, that's one of my fantasies. No, because really the marshmallow, when we do the spaghetti towers, we do the spaghetti towers just about every year. And some years the kids really like go to town on turning those marshmallows into some sort of goop, and they leave like ears to elbows in marshmallow. You were saying Lego, sorry.
Yeah, well, I just wanted to add to that, as that's one of the reasons we have nice carpet in our library. So we wanted to make a space that you can, you know, get dirty. I guess that's the best way that I could, you know, explain it, is because that's when they're getting that engaged and they're getting messy, the learning is amazing.
Yes, it's going to be loud, it's going to be dirty, and that's got to be a kind of okay.
Absolutely. We did egg drop challenge where, you know, kids were building a crate for their eggs, and then they actually had the custodian go on the roof and drop their inventions off of the roof. So I mean, just it was a really great transition from the traditional science fair project to this classroom STEM experiments. And they did them in their classroom, but it was, you know, as we transition into our new makerspace, I can just see all of these supplies being stored and people signing up to go there and really getting dirty and allowing kids to experiment. And what I'm looking for is student engagement and, you know, a connection to what they're working on, because the learning there is just so, it just takes it to another level, in my opinion. I saw it over the last 2 weeks as kids were working on these different STEM projects, and it was unbelievable to see. As an assistant principal, it was great.
Well, now there's some real opportunities you can take advantage of in that whole school community if you've got something like that going. Because imagine if in a future year you've got one grade level working on the egg drop challenge, but another grade level is working on siege machines, and they build a trebuchet that throws the eggs. Right? Like there's all kinds of, and if it doesn't work, you can still drop the eggs off the roof, right? There's all kinds of different kind of collaborations you can come up with. But you know, it's exactly what you're talking about, where it's like signing up for Makerspace should be an opportunity to sign up for essentially an assistant teacher for a few hours, right? Somebody who can help you get everything set up, get your materials sourced, get everything cleaned up afterwards, provide a meaningful context, and allow you the freedom to kind of build that lesson with them. I ambush the teachers at my school a lot, sometimes first thing in the morning, and I'm like, what are you guys working on? What's going on today? And I try to come up with, something that's really relevant. I'm hoping that after I've been doing this more than a year, I've got, maybe a week lead time on that. We can do some more planning. But sometimes it does end up being, oh, hey, what's on the wall? What are you guys up to? But there's so many different, but you can do that essentially because there's so many ways to integrate core curriculum, right? You don't have to be like building, churning butter, studying about the colonial days.
So let's open that one up a little bit because you've had a big influence in the work that I'm doing right now, especially when it comes to coding and programming. And recently we were talking about the amazing things happening over at Wonder Workshop with the dot and dash robots. And last week I was working with a teacher and I said, "What are you doing?" And she says that we're doing some social studies thing on Explorers, right? And I said, well, what if we took dot and dash and we programmed them to do this type of movement, and they have to go from one desk to the next, and that's going to simulate the Explorers going around the map. And I tried to bring in all of the coding programming stuff that we talk about here into that curriculum. And the teacher kind of looked at me and said, well, that's not teaching social studies, that's teaching programming, but you're using my curriculum. And I said,
so
yeah.
What she doesn't yet understand is that there actually isn't much teaching of coding that goes on, right? Once the kid gets that this is A, that's B, this is how you get from A to B, they're not learning anything else about coding, right? Instead, what you've got them doing is making a little film about the Explorer going from this is where my Magellan knowledge is really thin. Right? Like, I would love to be the kind of guy that would be able to improv at this point.
He went from he went from the east to the west.
Correct.
Right. He went west.
So,
Sam, are you telling?
I know the Animaniacs theme song.
Right. The East India Islands were right.
Farewell, Magellan, but I can't remember enough of it fast enough to get to anything that might be content.
Would you like me to sing it for you?
Thanks, Animaniacs. Actually, I've seen, that water tower. It's down the road. Ooh. Anyway, that's a good example because what you're doing isn't teaching coding, right? You're using coding to keep them in the content. You're using coding to extend that conversation about what Magellan was doing, where he was going, what order he went to places in. This is where you have a real, if you have something in a sequence, doing something like having the robot perform that sequence is brilliant because while you're working on the physical problem of getting the robot to these things, you're rehearsing that sequence and you're doing it with a partner because you've got 4 people working with this one robot. And that is an amazing way to get kids to just spend some time with the content.
But is that the same thing in STEM though? I mean, okay, if I'm doing Explorers and we build the tower using spaghetti and marshmallows because Magellan, who's by the way looking for the East India Islands that are right over there, he's going towards the tower. I think he fell on a spear somewhere in the story too.
Right, that was his undoing. So it's important to teach the kids not to fall on spears, obviously.
Right.
But the thing is, do you want to know a secret, Jeff?
You're gonna sing it?
Do you want to know a secret that I discovered and when I was teaching middle school very early on in my career?
Tell us, Rob. Sorry, Sam.
Rob, you got the secret? You can tell us if you got it. The secret is you can teach anything with anything.
Yes.
Right? And a makerspace is an opportunity to give kids an opportunity to get really hands-on with something and to make a lot of choices. So that's the frame we bring into this. Earlier this year, I wanted to teach my third graders how to work in a group, right? This is actually something that's really important to teach third graders because they're getting ready to really have enough of their own ideas to be really dangerous. And if you don't teach them to listen to other people, things get really difficult. And at one point in third grade this year, things were getting really difficult. So I said, okay, I need them to have to make a ton of decisions and then let go of them and do it in a situation that matters. So I decided I was going to make them work in groups, and we were going to build cardboard armor. Now, why cardboard armor? Because it's so freaking cool, right? It's so cool, I could get them to work in groups over it, right? You take some high value thing and you match a high stakes goal with it. Does that make sense to you, Rob?
Yes.
And then I made them make a bunch of decisions as individuals. One of them was, before they could talk as a group about what their suit of armor was going to look like, they each had to draw 6 versions of it. And
Ooh.
then as a group, they had to decide on one drawing for their suit of armor. Now, this is just straight up evil, right?
Because it is, because I can just imagine third graders going to battle over this.
Right?
No,
and you
no pun intended
them,
there?
Total, right? You talk to them about how to listen to other people's ideas, how to let go of their own ideas, and it gets heated. And I've got, a pretty good student-teacher ratio, so I can drop in at those moments and really help people talk through this. But they had to then do research, and, we had the librarian help them out, so we actually had got some great research skills. They had to choose who in their group was going to be their model, and they had to get measurements. So there were a lot of tape measures and lots of, writing things out and creating documents and diagrams and whatever. And if you look at NGSS, creating diagrams and drawings is all over the place as far as both science and math. And then they actually had to, really fabricate these things. But there were so many opportunities for them to know, use what they knew or learn new things in order to be able to do it.
So, Sam, today we're here to talk about some great activities, and you said that you have a few in mind that would be great to have a nice discussion on. What kind of activities are you able to share with us today?
One of my favorite activities is almost too simple. Paper airplanes.
What?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. It takes one sheet of paper.
See how far it'll go?
One sheet of paper per minute per kid. They end up making a lot of airplanes if you give them a choice. And, then you set up, like, what are you doing with it? The first time I did paper airplanes with the kids, it was about the world record paper airplane and how far that traveled. And it was 200 and something feet. So we actually measured that out and in the hallway. And then we flew our own airplanes. And then we took the designs that were used for the world record paper airplane, and we did those. I did that with every grade this year, kindergarten on up. We didn't do paper folding with pre-K. They have, especially at the beginning of the year, they don't have the coordination to do fine folds. But everybody else
oh, yes, they
made paper airplanes.
And Sam, the world record's 226 feet, 10 inches.
There you go. And that's actually just a little bit shorter than the distance of the entire hallway of our school. Now, if you watch the video, it's done in a warehouse, and that height ends up being really important. So the kids operate under the illusion that we might somehow match that flight. Not going to happen. We've only got like a 10-foot ceiling in that hallway. And when you look at the world record throw, they get a lot of height on that, which is obviously a really important thing. But so much measurement, so much just design and redesign, giving them multiple designs they can try out. I gave them a lot of directions that were written. Now, here's the dirty secret. It's number 2. You can use anything to teach reading and writing, right? You want your kids to do more reading and writing? Give them directions to paper airplanes that are written out, that they have to read and understand. It is the most brilliant nonfiction writing in the world. As far as technical writing, it's very specific. The images are just as important as the words, and it takes a few times to get it right. So, my recommendation is not to walk the kids through it, but to give them like essentially 4 or 5 different models they can choose from, and they have to read the directions and go through it. Most of the models also have videos available online. Like I use a World's Greatest Paper Airplane book, but if you search how to make paper airplanes on YouTube, there are plenty of people who've created videos. So, and I'm one of those too. But paper airplanes, 1 sheet of paper, maker activities. And I've got at least 2 more of those in that category.
What would the second one be that you have, Sam?
Well, the first one's airplanes, and the second one's very derivative. It's boats.
Okay.
Right? You ever make that fortune telling hat? That hat
Right.
that could have been a fortune teller, that
Right.
could have been a boat.
Right.
Yeah, that thing. Right. So many of my students have never made one of those, and it's not their fault. They just weren't raised right. So we teach them how to make that. There's also a variation of that is a paper chomper or a paper, yes, Jeff, puppet.
Ooh.
Right? So, you can have them build a little puppet. And especially for like the first and second graders, having them look at a video for directions, I actually use this to teach them how to learn from a video.
So how do you keep the paper boat from sinking?
That's a really important question, Jeff.
Thank you.
And that's what I like to call a fruitful problem. And depending on what grade level you're working with and how many answers you want to give the kids, you can make that simple or complex. What are some things you can think of that repel water?
Witches.
I don't think they repel water.
but they float, right?
I guess so.
Because they're made of wood.
Right. But
right.
Okay, so anything else in your house or maybe in your classroom desk?
You're asking what repels water?
Yeah.
3 babies on bath night.
That is true. You should teach your babies to color with crayons.
Oh.
Because if you did,
it's a good thing you didn't say
they
the
could
witches.
Color one side. No. That's on you, brother. They could color one side of the paper, and if the bottom of the boat is colored with crayon, it floats longer.
Ooh, so wax.
Also, if you have plastic bags, that might work. You can actually. We did a whole professional development activity where we read a story called Turtle Island, and then the adults had to design a boat that would transport the animals to and from Turtle Island. Which is very similar to the 1 sheet of paper activity, but we gave them like strawberry baskets and plastic bags.
That sounds like a pretty cool idea. I think I actually might have some teachers that are reading Turtle Island now.
Right? And if you're thinking content-rich activity, this is a nice transition into storytelling.
Bring your camera up.
There's a nice transition into storytelling where you take a story and you use it as a prompt for making in the classroom.
Cool.
Yeah.
So clearly, Sam, these are easy ideas that all you have to do is have a great place to find the inspiration. Where do you suggest going to inspiration? I know when we were talking about this, you said I have a great member of our personal learning network. We can find him on Twitter. Who was the person out there? Who was the teacher that you went to say, I would love to get some information and activities?
Brian Briggs at Bry Briggs, Briggs on the Twitter, is a phenomenal instructional learning leader in Northern California. And he's also a podcaster on the Check This Out podcast. And when earlier this week, I was in a conversation where he suggested a bunch of different maker resources. So, there's no shortage of ideas out there. I think the key is just to find a source you trust and that aligns with what you want out of your makerspace. There are plenty of ways that you can run your makerspace as a give each kid a kit, have each kid build the kit kind of experience. But typically what I look for are teachers who are looking to use the Makerspace to essentially create cooler lessons than they could without a Makerspace.
And I believe we're going to have all of these links and stuff up on our website over at TechEducatorPodcast.com, where you can, of course, check them out and connect with Brian as we go through here. Rob, we're sharing a lot of ideas here. Could you ever see either working with your own kids or working with your kids on, hey, let's bring in a big tub, color a sheet of paper, and let's just see how far we can make that boat move?
Absolutely. I mean, one of the things I think is really important is making those, interconnections between all subjects. And I think that, as Sam said, reading and writing is part of everything. And so I think that connecting into things that are going to engage students are really important. When I ran an after-school program, we had a collaboration with CPEP, which is a Connecticut pre-engineering program, and this was more of a kit, Sam, where they would send all of the materials and the kids would have to design.
Mm-hmm.
So one of them is, we have a theme park in Connecticut called Lake Compounds. They actually send them like tubing and sticks and tape, and they say, design the roller coaster for our amusement park. And then at the end of May, they come together and they pick, they have this whole big competition where they judge the roller coasters. Another project that they would do is air-powered boats, where they would actually build their boats and they would race them to see which one would go the fastest.
And that's, those are two awesome examples. You could do a whole year plus on roller coasters. There are so many different ways and reasons to do roller coasters that are great. Air-powered cars, air-powered boats, air-powered rockets, air-powered
mousetrap race cars are pretty cool.
Right? Mousetrap race cars, although those make, maybe for older kids, my kids would end up, the fingers
Absolutely.
in the trap, right?
Yep.
Like it's always an issue of, trying to do stuff that's really cool, but also safe enough for the kids that you have to work with, because, I love to do my job. If I burn the children and injure them, they won't let me continue to do it.
This is true. But I think that, there are so many resources out there that you can find in a quick Google search. But I think the key is connecting it to the curriculum, because that's where you're getting your best bang for your buck. When you can have something that is directly connected. So we just had peppermint race cars. And one of the judges from the STEM Expo asked the kid, how is this connected to what you're learning in any subject? And one of the kids said, well, in math, we're learning about angles, and went into this whole conversation with the judge about how the angle made a difference in their cars that they designed.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And I think that it just makes what they're learning about in their math, science, social studies, reading, writing, it just enhances it.
Right. And if we do it right, you could ask 10 kids in that room that question,
and they'd have a different
answer.
Get
different answers, right?
Absolutely.
It's not about saying, oh, this was the challenge I have. I work with a very traditional teaching coach, and he's awesome. And it's really been one of the first times I've been closely coached. And early on in the year, he would ask me what my learning objectives for the class were, and I would list off 12. And then I'd stop and I'd be like, and there's a bunch I don't know. And he's like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, there's all of these opportunities for students to apply knowledge they have from class, but I don't know what that is yet.
Sam, can you drop your camera?
Sure.
There you are.
And that's always the exciting part for me, where you can create lessons that are connected to the curriculum, but at the same time open enough that the kids can bring in what they feel is relevant from other things they've learned.
Yes, the learning outcome shouldn't be fixed.
Right. And in my best lessons, there are learning outcomes I have not yet imagined.
So, Sam, we have a great chat going on over here on TeacherCast.tv. And I want to give a shout out. We are here, of course, every single Tuesday night at 8 o'clock Eastern. We do our live Tech Educator podcast. We'd love for you to be a part of it. And, of course, love to have you be on it. If you have any suggestions for our show, you can always reach out to us at info@teachercast.net. We'd love to hear from you. Or, of course, find us on Twitter at TeacherCast. Sam, we talked a little bit about boats. We talked about paper airplanes. We talked about spaghetti. We talked about things that are really, really easy for teachers just to pick up. I find when looking for resources, the best place to go is Pinterest. Do you find anything of interest on Pinterest? Where do you, again, we're looking at where the resources are and stuff like that. I always think about our friend Meredith Martin, who does Dollar Store STEM. And she has, a 100-pound case filled with 1,000 pounds worth of stuff in it. And it's all dollar store type items. And it really is. She just shows up to an ed camp and she just opens everything up, and it's fantastic. And you wouldn't think about doing that stuff. Let's get back to your list. Again, airplanes, boats, spaghetti. What other kinds of activities can we be doing here?
There's so many different ones. So I want to talk really quickly about designing for a robot. Right, I have a number of Sphero robots, and they actually can play an active role in my Makerspace because they're essentially a remote control motor that I don't have to do any work to get it to work. So this week in my Makerspace, my kindergartners are learning about push and pull forces. Right, this is NGSS, this is science, this is them learning all about Newton and whatever. And I gave them a strawberry basket, a couple of axles and some wheels, and a Sphero. And they had to explore and figure out how they could get that Sphero robot to either push a cart or pull a cart. And next week we're gonna introduce loads and see whose cart works the best. So that's really simple and just a hands-on extension of a conversation they're having in class. And they played for a while. We had them take some pictures. We had them post it to Seesaw. We had them do a little bit of annotation on their pictures. Very simple lesson, but really meaningful, really engaging for the kids because they got to play with the robots, and really kind of revelatory for us to see what they understood about the way that push and pull worked. Some kids immediately got that there was no way that Sphero robot was going to successfully push that cart for any amount of time before the cart turned on it. And that was really hard to correct for. Just watching the kids work is amazing, right? Because you're trying to figure out who are all of these people, and you can see them kind of come up with ideas, share ideas, get through ideas. And of course, you're always working on group dynamics and communication.
Nice.
So we've talked sheets of paper. We've talked a little bit about robots. I feel like I should mention puppets, Jeff.
What about?
Well, puppets is a specific example I would use for the very common thing of sewing. A lot of the conversation in today's Makerspace awareness falls into making spinning fidgets and 3D printing things and this kind of stuff. But so often we're not looking at, the very simple and accessible technology of sewing, taking two pieces of fabric and connecting them to each other and making something out of it. My kids come in during recess in order to sew things, and we do sewing as part of projects in class. The second graders created a pillow using sewing, and then they used a technique called needle felting to create an image of an animal that they made up on their pillow. They'd been studying different categories of animals, and this animal had to be in two different categories as far as where it lived. And then they had to create in Scratch Junior the environment that animal lived in and program that animal to exist in that environment. So this was a 3-part lesson that was all about habitats and animals, which is a lot of what our second grade spends time studying. but we used hand sewing to create a pillow. We used needle felting to create an image, and we used Scratch Junior to animate a story.
That's pretty cool.
That is very cool.
It was really cool and super authentic, and the kids had a lot of fun with it.
And it's connected to the curriculum.
Right. The teachers loved it, and they were willing to. And here's the thing. If the Makerspace teacher does a really good job of integrating the curriculum, the classroom teachers don't mind helping out with the Makerspace class because they see the relevance and connection.
I would assume that when you're working on these, the kids, much like when my kids don't want to go to bed, have a hard time when the bell rings and they have to go back to their classes.
You know, you actually have to plan for that, right? Like to really be kind about the process, you have to keep them aware where they're at in the process. You don't want to interrupt them cold, right? You want to give them an opportunity to gracefully finish out and get out of what they're doing in a way that makes them feel kind of at ease with it. What isn't talked about enough about Makerspaces is the fact that it is a creative community. And just like, you know, you wouldn't want to slam a book down to stop somebody who is writing, you don't want to just, you know, go over and unplug somebody's, you know, computer or sewing machine or something like that and be like, all right, off to the next class. You know, a lot of them need to finish something. And my kids especially need guidance like, okay, there's only 3 minutes left, which means it's not time to hurry, but it's time to slow down, to let this be, to not, you know, do anything else with this now and wrap it up, because their instinct is to start moving really fast.
To try and get it done.
And then they break the needle on the sewing machine or whatever in the last couple of minutes of class.
But
so it's part of caring for them as makers to, you know, give them that space and guidance to be successful.
But does that mean that okay, let's say that you have a 50-minute class. Does that mean you're creating a 20-minute lesson for the kids? Or does that mean you're creating a 10-minute lesson for the kids by the time you get intro, cool down, lesson part in there? How big are these projects? Or when you're doing paper airplanes, that sounds like that's a multi-day lesson.
Paper airplanes is a one-day lesson, and some of these are definitely designed to be a one-day lesson.
So then does that mean that you gave them the details that it's a 250-foot, or are they spending time Google searching paper airplane world records and videos?
I gave them an intro that included a video by the world record paper airplane guy.
Got it.
So that was part of our into set. I gave them all of that up front. And then I asked them the question, how far is that? And they said, I don't know. And I said, well, I talked to the gym teacher and I got this big tape. And they were like, oh, cool. I'm like, how can we figure out how far that was? And they're like, we could use the tape in the hallway. And I said, that's a good idea. And we were off. But I actually did it that way so that I wasn't saying, now we're going to go measure the hallway, right? Because as soon as I start telling them what we're doing, whether or not it works is my fault, right? And I have become a real connoisseur of like getting kids to make choices as much as possible, because the more choices they make, the more responsibility they're taking on for the success of what they're doing. Otherwise, it's the kid who says, what do I do next? And you tell them and they go, I did that. It didn't work. What do I do next? And that's
what you don't want.
Right? That's where many of my students start. And what I'd like to do in the Makerspace is teach them how to be resources for themselves, to solve their own problems, to take the initiative, to do a Google search for it, to, you know, the key is they need to want to do whatever it is enough to figure it out.
So how do we bring that mentality into the science, social studies, general education teacher? Because most gen eds are sitting there going, it's right, it's wrong, and this is the way it works. Go to the next question. How do we bring that STEM mentality into the full class curriculum? Rob?
I think it has to, you know, it's that growth mindset. I think that teachers have to see themselves more as this, you know, creating the inquisitiveness of students versus being the be all end all answer, everything goes through me. And I think that, you know, it takes time. I think, you know, it really to give up that control. I think that it's really, something that as an admin, I have to support my teachers in taking risks and
I was going to
showing.
say, as an admin, how do you do that, right? How do you get them to feel comfortable turning over control? Because that's hard.
It is hard. And it starts with relationships. It starts with really trying to, for me to be like, if it doesn't work, it's okay. And celebrate successes. And even sometimes when we fail, as long as we're taking that risk, I think that will get them to take more risks in the classroom and to really show them that we need thinkers. We're not churning out people, students to go into the factory anymore.
So
I
Because
think
the factories are not there, right?
they are not, unless they're moving overseas.
But this is the assistant principal / tech coach question, which is, how do you highly encourage yet not command? So I can't say, Sam, you must teach this way, but I can say, Sam, this is a really great idea. Why don't you try it? But I can also say, hey, let me show you how this works. Okay, now you do it. But you certainly don't want to walk in and say, okay, we have a new policy. You must create amazing thinkers.
So one of the big wins, I would say, for me, this is my first year in the school. One of my big wins is a teacher who is someone who is in control, took the risk of providing more personalized learning for math. And it took a while, just one-on-one coaching, working with her, went to that. And then she became the cheerleader. And I didn't have to go to other people. They came to me. So it was, I worked with one really, to really just support them and tell them, this is what I'm here for. Let's take a risk. Let's try it. And then she was very happy with the outcome, and it has spread.
Nice.
And it's not from me. It's from her.
Right.
And so I think that's really important, is find the teacher with a loud voice or someone who is influential. Work with them, support them, and they'll be your cheerleader. They'll be the ones that are telling everyone about the great things that have happened in their class, and then other people will want that for their class as well.
Nice. Well, Sam, I want to say thank you so much for bringing this topic to us. We certainly have gotten a lot of resources. And again, all of our resources are going to go up on our blog post for this show over at TechEducatorPodcast.com. And of course, you can find all the links over on TeacherCast.net. Sam, if anybody wants to reach out to you and get more information about this topic, Makerspaces, or anything coding and programming, I know you've got a great, successful blog. I know you've got a award-winning, successful blog, and I know you've also got a great podcast. Tell us a little bit about where we can get in touch with you.
If you go to mypaperlessclassroom.com, you can find links to all of my web presence and writing, etc. I'm also on Twitter at SAMPATUE.
And you do some podcasting, don't you?
We podcast at beyondthehourofcode.com.
Now, not to sound too modest here or make you blush or anything, but I'm gonna focus the camera on you. And Sam, do you have a book that's available for people to read on this subject?
There is a book out there. It is called Beyond the Hour of Code. Yeah, Programming in the Primary Grades, Beyond the Hour of Code.
Very, very cool. Rob, you got some good stuff going on here, and I love the fact that you're bringing in an administrative point of view. Where can we learn more about the great things that you're doing? And especially, there's a lot of stuff happening in the New Jersey, New York, Connecticut-ish area. Are there any big events coming up in the tri-state area here that you might want to talk about?
I know that this weekend there is the EdCamp Summit in Rhode Island. It's not really this area, but I'm going to be heading there to that summit to just kind of see what's going on. This summer, we have EdCamp Connecticut in upstate Connecticut. That'll be happening in August. You can find me at Rob Pennington 9 at .com, and you can find me at Rob Pennington 9 on Twitter.
And of course, you can find out all the great stuff that's happening here on the TeacherCast Educational Broadcasting Network. We are here live each and every Tuesday evening, except for next week, actually. I will say this. Next week, there's a big event happening I can't quite talk about yet, but I think we're going to be talking about it a lot after the event. We're kind of under NDA with a few things, but if you've been reading the news about education, there's a big event happening.
NDA, oh my goodness, I love that band.
No, Waka. No. Oh,
that's right. That's NWA.
No, we're not going to talk about that.
Never mind.
No, you're making me cut this stuff out. So next week we're going to be off, but the following week we're going to be back. We've got some great shows. We have a great show coming up with Seesaw. We have a great show coming up with Kite Learning. We've got a great show coming up with well, we got a couple of nice shows. We got a good show coming up on Google Earth. We were supposed to be talking about Google Earth tonight, but we had to make some corrections at the last minute. So we will be postponing and rescheduling our Google Earth show. Guys, thank you so much for coming on. And of course, we want to thank everybody out there on the chat box for keeping it lighting up. A lot of great links. On behalf of everybody here on the TeacherCast Educational Broadcasting Network, my name is Jeff Bradbury, reminding you to keep up the great work in your classrooms and continue sharing your passions with your students.